afternoon, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Advisory Review Panel, convened to review FY24-25 Arts Organization Support Grant Program applications for Region 7. This is panel 3 of 3. I am Maya Michelson, Executive Director of the Indiana Arts Commission, and I'm serving as today's review panel moderator. Today is May 3rd, 2023. It's 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are meeting both online and streaming live for applicants and the public to observe. There is to be no contact between the panel and the audience about the disposition of applications, either before, during, or after the panel meeting. This meeting will be recorded and made available upon request. At this time, I'll individually invite each of the panelists, the Regional Arts Partner staff, and then IAC staff to introduce themselves. Panelists will state their name, occupation, and where they're from, and staff will state their title and role. So we'll start with the panel first. I'll introduce each of you by your first name so that you can share a little bit about yourself, including where you're zooming from today. We'll start with Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Telligman, Director of Programs at Indiana Humanities, and I am zooming in today from Indianapolis.
Thanks and welcome, Megan. Our next panelist is Patrick.
Hi, I'm Patrick Tisdale. I'm a carpenter and an artist from Franklin, Indiana.
Welcome, Patrick. Joanna.
I'm Joanna Taft. I'm Executive Director of the Harrison Center, and I'm in the Harrison Gallery today.
Great, thank you, Joanna. Our fourth panelist, Liz Furman-Bragg, will be joining us for the last 3 applications that we're reviewing today. So we will give everyone a chance to hear from Liz later this afternoon. So now we'll move on to our Regional Arts Partner staff. Ryan.
My name is Ryan Shelton. I am the Partnership Manager at Nickel Plate Arts, which facilitates art in Eastern Hamilton County, and I'm in Noblesville today.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Eric.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Ashby. I'm the Grants and Research Manager for the Indiana Arts Commission, doing all the tech things today.
And Paige.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paige Sharp, Deputy Director of Programs at the IAC, and I'm here to address any policy clarification or information from the applications as needed.
Thanks, Paige. Now we'll begin the panel review, and for folks who are watching the live stream and for our panelists, this is how the process is going to work. The panel will discuss each application, and the assigned reader will provide a summary of their review before discussion moves on to the full panel. Once the panel has completed their discussion, we'll give them a few moments to update their scores in the online grant management system. As a panel moderator, I encourage the panelists to be conversational in their discussion, to ask questions of each other and chime in when they have thoughts to add. While we want to be mindful of time and focus on the highlights, I am here to ensure that the discussion includes each of the 4 evaluation criteria, which are organizational excellence, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access, otherwise known as IDEA, artistic quality, and community engagement. If one of our panelists has a conflict of interest with an application, they'll be placed into the waiting room until we're ready for the next application. And that will happen later on in panel review, and we will go over that again when we get to it. Are there any questions from our panelists? All right, hearing none, then we'll begin. On screen is a list of applications that will be reviewed. They're in somewhat alphabetical order. We're going to start with our first application this afternoon, which is Iibada Dance Company. And Megan, you are the first reader for this application, so whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Maya. Yeah, so in terms of our first criteria, organizational excellence, I noted that the response provided all of the requested detail, and I think provided an especially helpful look at organizational history, that it was just good context for me to have in learning more about the organization and what they're up to. In terms of our next criteria, which is IDEA, I noted that the response definitely demonstrated a reflection on IDEA as it operated in the organization, which I appreciated it a lot. But I would have liked a bit more detail on the final questions that were prompted in this section, specifically what needed to change to accomplish the goal, though their inclusion, diversity, equity, and access goals were well stated. And it would have been helpful to know how they think about their audiences now. So who are they serving? how are teaching artists selected and how do these groups indicate their implementation of IDEA. So those were my notes there. Obviously a lot of reflection, but I still had a few questions that would have helped me assess the application. In terms of artistic quality, I really appreciated the details about the professional development for dancers. That seemed a very key part of their mission here. But again, kind of like in the previous section, I was curious to hear more about how artists were selected, both in terms of instructors and the pieces performed. And then finally, in terms of community engagement, I noted that it's very clear that the organization works with community in mind and is deeply passionate about their community and how they serve. And just to note that a few more specifics would have been helpful in understanding how the organization, the input that the organization collects affects decision-making. So would there be potentially a specific example of how survey responses have led to a new decision being made? And then how are those decisions being made alongside community or with community needs in mind? So again, obviously passionate and supportive of community, but just wanting a bit more information about how those inputs result in decision-making in the organization. So those were my comments.
Great, thanks, Megan. So now we'll open it up to the full panel. Any additional comments or observations on this application? Just jump in. Okay, hearing none. I will ask the panelists. I want to make sure no one's got any additional comments. Okay, Patrick?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment about the
Sure.
mission statement feeling a little bit broad. It's just a little small critique. If that could be tightened up, I wonder what that would do from the top down. Things like cultural enrichment. What does that mean? How does that play out in the narrative? It's hard to connect some of those broad, big concepts to boots on the ground type things.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Any other comments? All right, hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, it looks like everyone has done that. So we'll move on to the next application, and that is Indiana Artisan. And Patrick, you are the reader for that application. So whenever you're ready.
Sorry, let me pull it up.
So no hurry.
There. Right. All right. So under organizational excellence, I felt like the mission statement was clear and the applicant has described its programming and how it achieves the mission. I appreciated that the application immediately included kind of narratives and comments from its constituency. I thought that made strong case for its strength there. I guess my only feedback on that would be a little bit more detail about leadership and the board. It allows for 15 and 3 seats for artists, and I just wondered if those seats were filled. That was that one comment there. Under idea concepts, the applicant uses the word need a lot in describing these concepts, and so that tells me they understand there's a need, but I'm wondering what the plans are. And so I kind of in my notes I wrote, it seems like they cracked the door on this, the idea concepts, but I would encourage them to kick the door down and look for 1 or 2 things that they could just implement immediately, small things that could happen right away to help them along that journey. Under artistic quality, which is a page back. Let's see. It looks like their process of membership is clear, and for vetting their members as quality artisans. It's obviously important to them as an organization, but I guess I wonder just how that plays out, like feedback from their artists. Well, I guess they have some feedback, but like yeah, I guess that's what I got on that one. And finally, on community engagement, it looks like I love that the applicant takes advantage of opportunities that present themselves. So there's mention of things that come up, and they seem to have the ability to kind of just integrate when opportunities show up, which is really cool, that they can keep that kind of ability to move quickly despite their size. And I think that the applicant shines when they consider their primary community, the artists and the members. It's more narrow than when they mention at one point the entire state as our community. I think I understand why they mention that, but when they look at their members as their primary audience, I think they shine, they achieve their mission in that moment more than when their focus is kind of as broad as the entire state. That's my guess.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Additional comments from the panel?
I think I wanted to hear more about how they were engaging communities of color. They talked about advertising on WFYI, but I wanted to see more strategy there.
Right. Thanks, Joanna. Other comments from the panel? Okay. Hearing none, I'd ask the panelists to finalize their scores for this application. Okay, our next application is the Indiana Entertainment Foundation, and Joanna, you're the reader for that one, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I learned a lot from this application. I'm really, there are so many interesting things that more Hoosiers need to know about. I didn't know about the Indiana Musicpedia website. I didn't know about the Indiana Music Library. I didn't know about the online radio station. So this was a very educational application and lots of really rich content. It sounds like this organization was primarily had an online presence and now is opening a physical space in Broad Ripple, which is good. I was very impressed with what I learned about the organization, but it did seem like the organization is dependent on a key person who should be commended. They sound amazing, and a key donor who should also be commended. They know that they need to expand their volunteers, their board members, and their donors to build capacity. Under IDEA, they've always wanted to be diverse. They make intentional programming decisions to serve diverse populations, and they've been intentional about including diverse voices in their collection. They're clearly good people who want to partner and serve the community. They're doing valuable work, but it wasn't clear they'd had any diversity training or if they understand how systemic inequities affect even their own organization. I would have liked to hear about their journey. Under artistic quality, I was really blown away by the work that they do and what they've accomplished. I'm so glad that they're doing this work and that they're strengthening Indiana. They're moving from online to a physical presence, which will provide more opportunities for impact. There's no doubt that their archives are significant and the recording work is serious. Under community engagement, they are an eager organization that's reaching out and building partnerships. They seem to dream and make many of those dreams happen. Not every organization can do that. Their volunteers and board members include significant names from the Indianapolis music community, partnerships listed. There's some significant partnerships there as well. And they have impressive results for an 8-year-old organization that has gone through a few years of COVID. So I'm excited to see what they're going to accomplish in the next few years, but I would like to see more now that we're out of COVID, more going back to meeting with the community.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. So we'll open it up to the full panel. Additional comments on this application?
I have one small comment, and I may be out of my depth here, but and under the idea category, I was curious about archiving and like the broad history of music in Indiana, and especially in small pockets of localized music, what that looks like, how they find those small pockets, especially if they don't exist anymore. It seems like a daunting task, but I'm not a historian, so I was just curious about that and wondered if there are strategies in place to get that work done over time.
I found it was interesting that they had a list of the items that they have, but also a list of the items that they don't have. And I wanted to hear more about that. I mean, that was very interesting to me.
Yeah. Great. Any other comments, Megan?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think I might be driving a few points home here, so apologies if I'm being a little redundant. There were a few places where more specifics just would have been helpful. So in organizational excellence, a little more detail on governance and committee structure, kind of to Joanna's point about, this seems very dependent on individuals. So I could have used some background on how they're approaching governance. In terms of idea, there's obvious efforts to diversify leadership and the collection. So I would have loved to hear more about the goals for that and then steps taken so far and incorporating those specific examples. So just little things like that, where I think some specifics would have helped kind of drive home what is a really ambitious project with all of these different operating pieces. So again, I learned a lot from this as well. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Megan. Any other comments from the panelists? Okay, I'll ask you to finalize your scores. Okay, our next application is Indiana Music Education Association. And Megan, you are the reader for that application. So whenever you're ready.
Can you say the name again? Sorry.
I've got the next application I've got is Indiana Music Education Association.
Thanks. Sorry, I was
Okay.
hearing. All right. So for this one, under organizational excellence, I thought that all the requested details were provided in great, were explicated in a really sufficient way. I have a good sense of what the membership organization does and their kind of work in the state. In idea, I thought that the establishment of a task force indicates a commitment to the principles of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. I did think that more demographic details, or at least a discussion of strategies to diversify leadership, would have been helpful in assessing how those commitments are playing out. But I did note that the programming for the students does seem to be broadly inclusive with specific examples provided. In terms of artistic quality, since this is a membership organization, I think they gather their artistic quality from their membership base of music educators, and the professional development opportunities seem designed to further this resource. And then finally, in community engagement, again, the kind of unique status of being a convener of all these people that do this work in the state. The applicant seems to be working with that community's needs at the center, just kind of by default. But I was curious how student needs were being assessed and how these inputs were, taken into account for developing programs and things like that, or the is there a youth council? Are students being kind of incorporated into any planning or decision making on that half of the work that they do? So those are my
Great.
comments.
Thank you, Megan. So we'll open it up to the full panel. Additional comments?
Under organizational excellence, I really appreciated the clarity of their mission, and it points down towards a comment I made in their artistic quality, which is that they clearly want the best for music education, and they seem to be pointed at the students in that regard for the legacy of that mission, which is admirable because it feels like a long-term legacy project. I couldn't get away from the idea that quality for this organization, in a sense, isn't just about the music, but about the quality of the process of that educating and helping educators to educate the children.
That's great. Thank you, Patrick. Other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize scores. Okay, our next application is Indiana Performing Arts Center Theater Company. Megan, you are the reader for that application, so whenever you're ready.
Thanks. In terms of organizational excellence, I thought there was great detail on organizational structure and the programming efforts. Again, I felt like the kind of list of things they take on a year was just helpful for me in understanding the scope of their organization and impact and how they're thinking about that. So I thought there was great detail there. In terms of IDEA, said the organization is obviously committed to these principles and provides examples. I noted that, while they're centered in central Indiana, it was great to see outreach to other parts of Indiana as well. I think Fort Wayne and South Bend might have been mentioned, if memory serves. So it was great to see, geographic diversity in addition to the other types of diverse perspectives they include. On artistic quality, again, I just thought there was great detail listed here in how they approach quality, performance selection, opportunities, all the trainings and educational opportunities they provide. I just appreciated detail on who's leading those and who's participating, and all of that. Sorry, there's a siren going by. And then finally on community engagement, I thought that it very clearly demonstrated a pathway between community input and how decisions are made about programs. I also thought that the partnership seemed well developed and mutually beneficial to all the partners involved. And I appreciated too that there was a clear evaluation strategy. That's always a challenge for organizations. Evaluation, what are we asking for? How are we reflecting on that? But it seemed like there was a clear strategy here.
Great, thank you, Megan. So we'll open it up to the full panel. Additional comments on this one?
I have just a couple, just to kind of pile on the positivity on this, some of the application here. Starting from a bookend it from the organizational excellence down to the engagement, and just say that I can see that there's they seem to have enough resources to handle things like the engagement piece, which is great, because it could be the kind of situation where they're using their resources to do more programming and grow in this kind of way. But I just think it's admirable, like how they're handling the feedback and the development on that engagement piece.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Other comments? All right, hearing none, if the panelists would take a minute to finalize their scores. Our next application is Indiana Wind Symphony, and Joanna, you are the reader for that one, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, under organizational excellence, the organization has a very clear mission and unique purpose. It has a committed volunteer group of trained and auditioned musicians. They sound like they have strong goals for more impact and are in the process of developing more partnerships. They give examples of their outreach to the community and their programs. Under IDEA, their outreach work was interrupted by COVID, and they do prioritize making a welcoming atmosphere and offering free and reduced price tickets to increase audience access. They are actively reaching out to independent living centers to raise awareness, and they plan to do that with schools. They have and they are reviewing IDEA concepts to increase and incorporate into day-to-day operations. And this next year will be one of laying a solid foundation, restructuring and planning for long-term success. They have a lot of plans, and so I'm hoping to see that that they will be making firm steps in this area. Under artistic quality, the musicians are skilled in experiences. Their performances, include premier works. They offer master classes to grow their performers. They have some educational components with indoor concerts with printed material. They have goals to add website and digital versions of the concert. I think a big challenge for them is that their established directors retiring, and that that is a challenge for an organization like theirs, but they are anticipating evolving their membership to navigate the change. Under community engagement, they gave the metaphor of the community band as central to the town, and providing social events of great importance and kind of being a gathering place. So I love their heart for wanting to welcome and gather. They're in the brainstorming stage of a lot of community engagement, and I'd like to see more action steps. They have done development and strategic planning training, which is good to help them. They are adding a new concert for high school students to play with their musicians, for mentoring and for concert experience. Again, they have plans to engage assisted living communities, and they have taken steps with new survey tools, including QR codes for audience members to provide feedback. And they do track social media responses and encourage musicians to engage with audience members during intermission and after concerts.
Great, thanks, Joanna. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this one.
I did have a comment on under the idea section. There's a sentence that I pulled from their narrative where they say they deeply respect the privacy of their Plein members and audience members as it relates to collecting diversity information. And that struck me as competing ideas. And so I wanted clarity on that, like how is our privacy issues related to idea concepts, and how does that play out?
Yeah,
that was my concern there.
Yeah, so looking for more explanation of that position then.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll note there too, just as just like further reflection on that point. If demographic information is not collected, I could have used some information like even attendance numbers, examples of music selection and how that might be, an inclusive curation. I was curious about locations for outreach events, rates and uses for discounted tickets. Other details would have been helpful in helping me assess how the programming is being made available to community. And then just on that community engagement point as well, I could have used some more information on how, the QR codes and the kind of good innovations and collecting feedback are affecting, the programming, how those, how that feedback's being incorporated with the community in mind.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Any other comments on this application? Okay, I'll ask you to finalize your scores. Our next application is Indianapolis Baroque Orchestra. Megan, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Maya. In terms of organizational excellence, I thought that the response was very detailed and helpful in understanding their organization and their goals. I thought the specific examples of past successes were also really helpful in understanding what motivates the organization and how they achieve their mission. In terms of idea, I noted that the response definitely demonstrated an understanding of idea concepts and included specifics about demographics. I appreciated that they were straightforward about the challenges facing the organization in terms of their mission, connecting their mission to new audiences. And on that note, I would have appreciated just a bit more detail about, what the strategies are to address those challenges in diversification of audiences and performers. Under artistic quality, I thought, it was a great response, helping me understand and assess, how they're thinking about educational and artistic goals. Just, yeah, great detail here, and clearly think a lot about how they're selecting works to perform and also their educational programming and how they're approaching that. And then finally, on community engagement, I noted a particularly good example of a partnership that provided access to local youth. And I just would have liked to hear more about the organization's work with community in developing programming or any other outreach strategies, et cetera.
Hey, thank you, Megan. Other comments by panelists?
I'll just add that, similar to what Megan said, I didn't hear much about specific outreach to communities of color.
Thanks, Joanna. Other comments? Okay. All right. Hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Our next application is the Indianapolis Dance Company. And Patrick, you're the reader for that one. So whenever you're ready.
All right. There it is. All right. It looks like under organizational excellence, the applicant knows how it fits into its community and seems to have clarity about its goals, and has a strong grasp on leadership with the staff and the board and how that structure is in place to carry out its responsibilities. Again, I do think the mission could be clarified, but that's just, it seems to be something I fixate on. I know the value of a strong mission statement that's just concise and can lead from there down. Under idea, I see acknowledgement of the concepts of IDEA. And in response, I see free tickets as an effort to pursue those concepts, but I guess I'd like to hear more about demographics for the audience and what diversity comes in the form of leadership and the performers themselves. Let's see. Also, reading this, it looked to me like Mr. Hancock at the top kind of is the sole artistic director. And I wondered what kind of feedback he's getting to kind of program and do the programming, what kind of seats at the table he's providing for the programming itself. Let's see. Under artistic quality, it seemed very clear that they have a desire for excellence within the organization. I just wondered about the impact the students from the academy have, or I'm sorry, let me read this and get a little ahead of myself. I wonder how students from the academy or that have access to the one Christmas show might impact the organization. So there's that audience there, those students and in the audience members that are coming, how do they impact what the overall organization is doing? My reflection kind of in that space is that as I read these narratives, it's hard for me not to see the organization functioning it in more of a classic business model as opposed to the 501c3 public benefit model, which I understand there's this line, the balance between profitability and public benefit, but in the narrative, what I'm reading like very much reads in kind of to that side of a classic business model. With the community engagement, I hoped to see some more specific response to things like surveys and how the feedback from those things would affect the organization. I see the value of a global presence that's mentioned, but I also am wanting to see a connection to the community that they serve specifically, which is kind of falling in line with some of my other comments. So I'll stop there.
Great, thanks, Patrick. Other comments by panelists?
So they've talked about diversity and access over their 25-year history, but I would have liked to hear more about their own equity journey as a staff and board and how that affects their programming today. Have they learned anything new in the last 5 years?
Thanks, Joanna. Other comments?
Yeah, kind of in the same vein as many of Patrick's comments. I was curious about the partnerships listed under community engagement, how those were being considered. Were these organizations involved in decision-making or development of programming, or are these promotional partnerships? Kind of to what extent are these organizations involved in the work and working alongside?
Great. Thank you, Megan. Any other comments on this application? Okay, I'll ask you to finalize your scores. Okay, our next application is the Indianapolis Men's Chorus, and Joanna, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so for organizational excellence, they have a clear mission and they demonstrate organizational excellence through its programming and artistic through its programming and staff structure. It's been around since 1990, and it was really interesting for me to read that they had to, in 2000, I think it was 15, They had to reinvent themselves, almost have to start from scratch with only $3,000 in bank. So they were part of an umbrella organization and then became a separate nonprofit. So in the last 8 years, they've actually started an endowment at CICF, which was just amazing to me. So I was kind of inspired by reading their story, and they have a cash reserve. So this gives them confidence and flexibility. They list strong partners, but they have a small but strong administrative structure and an active board. Under IDEA, I see a desire to implement IDEA principles, and they provide examples of some growth in racial and gender diversity. They have been able to increase their BIPOC membership by 20% or to 20%. And they're currently having good discussions about how to reduce barriers for singer membership and audience membership. They tell us that the work they've dedicated in IDEA space has increased their volunteer choral membership, expanded their audience to a wider set of people, and brought new ideas to organizational storefront. I was still hungry to hear more. I just wanted to hear more. The artistic quality score, they've surveyed their audience in December, and they found that the vast majority of the respondents considered the quality of their show excellent. They're continuing to work on the skills of their community singers and pushing production quality. They do have a process for continual improvement. Under community engagement, they collect formal survey data and information feedback, and they review it with staff members. They gave several examples of how they did that and the difference that it made. They have a lot of partnerships and listed several good examples. And then they also talk about having a midwinter benefit concert and donating the net proceeds to help other like-minded nonprofits. I believe that their relationships are mutually beneficial and that they partner to build bridges and create a culture of acceptance and understanding.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Joanna. Other comments on this application? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to go ahead and finalize their scores. Okay, so I have been asked to give everybody a quick break. So we're going to break for about 5 minutes. We'll come back at 2:48. So everybody stretch your legs, run around the room, whatever you need to do so we can push it. We'll have one more break, remember, before our fourth panelist joins us, but we do want to take a break now. We'll see you back in 5. Thanks. Okay, looks like we are all back. So we will move on to our next application, which is the Indianapolis Suzuki Academy. Megan, you're the reader on that one.
Sorry. All right, I've got it up now. And this one, in terms of organizational excellence, I thought there was a very clear understanding of what the organization does with a really helpful level of detail in assessing if they, you know, how they achieve their mission, if they have the capacity to carry this out, et cetera. On IDEA, again, they provided very specific details on how progress has been made in diversifying leadership and the curriculum, which I appreciated. The organization has identified what is, you know, just based on how they operate, the major barrier to participation, which is tuition. And it appears that it appears as though there is a plan to investigate solutions in the near future. I would have appreciated a little more detail, given that that's the major challenge. I think it's mentioned that additional funding for sliding scale tuition would need to be enacted, but I would have liked to hear a bit more about strategies and how they were planning to approach that. In terms of artistic quality, the applicant provided great detail on how faculty are supported and trained. And I thought that was a particularly strong benefit of the program. I would have just, you know, in familiarizing myself, would have appreciated more detail on how faculty apply and are selected and how that process works for the artists involved. And then finally, in terms of community engagement, it appears the applicant has some measures in place to collect feedback. And there are some mutually beneficial partnerships that are defined. I'm curious how student feedback would be incorporated into the programming updates that are made, since students are the primary audience served here. So those are my reflections.
Thanks, Megan. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this one.
I really appreciated it, how they told their story. You know, they've grown in the last 5 years, and they have results from that, and they acknowledge they have more work to do, but they've identified barriers and goals.
Right. Thank you, Joanna.
Under artistic quality, that section, I pulled a quote from their narrative. It says, our faculty would prefer to see a student perform an easier piece with confidence and ease than a more difficult piece with tension and anxiety and frequent mistakes. And that one sentence to me was extraordinary, just in the sense of like what it does to a child when you build them up with small successes first. And I just think that is an admirable piece of their culture.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Additional comments on this application? Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to take a few minutes to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is the Indianapolis Women's Chorus, and Patrick is the reader for that application. Patrick, whenever you're ready.
Okay, let's see. I think I'm ready. Okay, here it is. Under organizational excellence, the The mission seems to be concise and clear. I'd like to hear more about the organization's work in transforming communities, as they say. How is that done through their programming, and in what ways are you hoping to transform communities? A little bit more specifics about that. And it sounds like the organization is on track in consideration of the staffing as a need that they're mentioned. Under IDEA, despite the potential flaw of the women's in the name of the organization, it seemed very clear, as they mentioned, that the leadership has made a big effort in regard to IDEA concepts and strategies. It's especially apparent in their tracking of demographic numbers and how specific the organization makeup is understood. That, coupled with the commitment to learning and understanding, I think shows a lot in terms of their movement in this category. Under artistic quality, there seems to be a deep care and concern for the members of the choir and creating a safe space for them to learn and achieve excellence, which again is one of those kind of subtle tweaks. I'm not thinking too much in terms of like what that actual end product and quality of that is, as much as how you get to that quality. And I think that's great. Under community engagement, I admired the dedication that this applicant has to their first community of volunteer singers. Again, just seems really important to them and valuable to the organization. And that attention can only do good over time. Let's see, and the engagement of the second community could use some work maybe, but and I mean the audience itself, but it appears that efforts are kind of being planned and in place for that piece as well. That's what I got on them.
Great, thank you, Patrick. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments. All right. I am hearing none. So we'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores for this one. So for the record, I skipped over one, the Indianapolis Shakespeare Company. So I want to circle back to that application. My apologies. My screen hiccuped and I skipped right over it. So I want to go back to Indianapolis Shakespeare Company. And Joanne, I believe you're the reader for that application. Great, thank you. If you would, whenever you're ready.
Yes.
Apologies.
For organizational excellence, the organization has been around since 2006, and they've they're a Shakespeare company, but they've demonstrated an ability to adapt to serve the community and to draw a very broad audience. They have an educational outreach program for schools. They're expanding the canon in 2023 by performing and commissioning productions by playwrights of color. In the summer, when many theater professionals don't have a lot of employment, they're keeping people employed with their summer productions. And then they've, as a small organization, they've learned how to leverage contractors to access expertise in administrative and fundraising areas. They have excellent partnerships that help them fulfill their mission. Under IDEA, I really loved the way Indy Shakes, which is what they go by, describes their IDEA journey and their story. And it was all accelerated with the relocation of the summer main stage to Riverside Park. I just, again, loved hearing how they developed strategies to prepare younger community members for board service, began school outreach, began centering African-American voices in their productions. They admit that they don't have all the answers, but they acknowledge it, and they've acknowledged that they have stumbled and will again. But I really appreciated this posture of humility and the way it's allowing them to serve the community well. and that they're demonstrating a lot of change, growth, and success. Under artistic quality, they demonstrate both high artistic quality, but also educational programs such as traveling workshops to schools. They measure artistic success by staying faithful to their mission and values while enhancing their community's cultural vitality. They give many great examples of how they do this. They measure their quality through company, community partner, and audience surveys. Under community engagement, I felt from their application, they've really listened to their community. Just in their neighborhood alone, I counted 11 neighborhood groups or committees that they've met with. And then they've changed their programs because of these meetings, because of this engagement. And they discovered the synergy of common elements and the power of learning from differences. And I was very impressed with the examples that they gave. And, many examples, and the application as a whole was very impressive.
Thank you, Joanna. So I'll open it up to the full panel. Other comments on this one?
Just a little bit of feedback on the organizational excellence piece. Again, with the mission statement being clear and concise, but the added value statements seem to muddy the waters a little bit. And I just wonder about like all of these things that kind of come out of there and the concept of mission creep. So what that could do to an organization when that kind of those banner headline type statements are so broad. But there again, on the flip side of that is the community engagement piece and how they handle that. And I just agree with what's been said, that the fact that the roots of the organization is kind of in the community meetings is a big deal and shows kind of a more of a commitment to the actual work than those kind of formalized statements and such.
Yeah, that's great, Patrick. Thank you. Other comments on this one? All right. Hearing none. If you finalize your scores. Okay, so we're going to get back in the proper order here and move on to the Indianapolis Youth Orchestra, which puts you again, Joanna, as reader. So whenever you're ready.
Yes, under organizational excellence, they have a clear mission and purpose. They've been in existence for over 40 years, and they can articulate what they teach and how they do it. They have excellent examples of their work and their understanding, and they have an understanding of the challenges ahead. Under IDEA, they tell their journey well. They articulate changes that they've made them both administratively and programmatically. And the audience is clearly defined and inclusive of underserved communities. Under artistic quality, they demonstrate a committed effort to provide quality art and educational experiences. They provide both artistic and educational activities and describe them well. They demonstrate a commitment to providing quality activities and demonstrate a strong level of artistic quality. There's no doubt that they have a significant commitment to this quality, and they have multiple examples. For community engagement, they demonstrate a commitment to including its families, students and families input in the planning, participation, and evaluation. I did want to hear more about the broader community input as an important part of its program development and delivery. They have strong partnerships that are two-way and mutually beneficial. I love the example of their helping raise funds for the musicians of the ISO when they were unable to work. The organization serves as a model to others in many ways. They have strong and multiple examples of their commitment to the community.
Thank you, Joanna. So we'll open it up to the full panel.
I have just kind of an odd comment under artistic quality. it seemed clear to me that the applicant had a sense of what it takes to create beautiful performances in beautiful spaces, but I couldn't get away from the idea of what that can that quality exist in a different way is what I put down. What would it look like, for example, to bring that elevated experience to a diminished space is all I could think to put as a descriptor there. Can beautiful music exist in a space that's not a beautiful orchestra space, and what might that look like? That was the only kind of thought that I couldn't get away from and wanted to include.
Right. Thank you, Patrick. Other comments on this one? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask you to finalize your scores. Okay, the next application for review is Kids Dance Outreach, and Megan, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
All right, under organizational excellence, I thought there was great detail here in helping understand how the organization approaches the work and how they I really envision their mission. I really appreciated their reflection on why these efforts are important, and the approaches they've taken to working with kids, and I think kind of an evolving way that comes out later in the application. So yeah, I thought organizational excellence had great detail and inspired a lot of confidence in the organization. Under idea, I really appreciated demographic information that demonstrates a commitment to these goals, especially for students with special needs. The staff also appears to be actively reflecting on issues of access and equity consistently. And I really appreciated that there was like an action plan with clear steps on how they're doing their work. One note for maybe some more information would be information on diversification of leadership, board, committees, anything like that. So how has diversity and inclusion been considered outside the audience served? I thought there was, in terms of artistic quality, I appreciated the descriptions of educational activities, gave me a good sense of kind of the programming that they do for students. But again, would have just liked a little bit more detail about artistic quality. So how the teaching artists are chosen and how that process works. And then finally, in terms of community engagement, I noted a really helpful community partner list just to get a sense of the scope of where they provide these services. And this new leadership position that they mentioned, I made a note that demonstrates an additional commitment in the future to incorporating community needs and being in partnership with community. So I appreciated that there was a structural change within the organization that seemed to indicate an commitment to community engagement.
All right, thank you, Megan. Any additional comments from the panel on this one?
I agree with a lot of what Megan said, and I only want to add under artistic quality, the idea that it seems like the primary place for quality resides with the instructors and how they impact the children, and therefore I wondered what efforts are made in terms of continuing education for the staff and that sort of thing to keep that elevated quality of the product while serving the kiddos.
Right. Thanks, Patrick. Other comments?
I would just say they have a very impressive list of partners, but I would like to have seen more of an articulation of the mutual beneficial part of that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you, Joanna. Any other comments? All right, hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is International Talent Academy, and Patrick, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right, let's see, under organizational excellence, the mission seems clear, but could be trimmed down a little bit to be a little bit more concise. I wonder how the board and teachers and artists support the mission in ways other than the programs. For example, who's tasked with developing the long-term health and growth and goals of the organization, and how will those things be achieved? Also, just how the community served by the organization is affected, the students and the families of the students. Are there examples of that sort of impact? Under idea, these concepts seem clearly to be on the radar, but seem broad at times. So again, I just wonder, are there 2 or 3 specific actions that could be identified and taken immediately to address any of the issues that are identified? Just, I think doing something like that could really push those things forward so much more quickly and easily. So just encourage that. Is there diversity in the leadership, including knowledge or experiences of being within the communities that are being served, that sort of thing? I think that could help quite a bit. Under artistic quality, let's see, I see a lot about the quality of the product in the narrative, and would suggest a return to the mission, where it says to develop confidence, creativity, and capabilities in every child. I would just like to hear more about that. I think that's the core of what they want to do. Let's see. Yeah, that's that. Under engagement, there are a lot of relationships listed here, and I wanted to hear more things like the following. They wrote in one part that through the discussion, they realized that many kids, especially in the age group of 10 to 15, are suffering from anxiety, depression, and loneliness as a result of they focused on programs that would involve children from this age. That single statement to me points to an opportunity to achieve the stated mission. And so in terms of community engagement, that stood out within the whole narrative. It seemed like, for lack of a better way of describing it, there's a lot of noise, and then there's this shining little moment that I just zeroed in on as a way to kind of lead the organization forward in terms of engagement. I think this is a great example of when they're doing it well. And that's it. That's all I got from this.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. So we'll open it up to the full panel for any additional comments.
I think the only thing that I'll just maybe double back on a little bit is a comment kind of between organizational excellence and idea, which was I was surprised there wasn't like a kind of more conversation about the international part of their mission. Just maybe some more understanding about how, the connection between an effort to, I assume, educate on international arts and how that mission would fit into their idea efforts. So I could have just, I would have appreciated some clarity there.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is the Museum of Miniature Houses and Other Collections. And Joanna, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
Under organizational excellence, they have a clear mission statement and they can articulate how they carry out their mission. They have, it's not just about the hobby of doll houses. They have a serious collection of over 8,000 items, and they have regular and public exhibits and educational workshops. They're a small organization, but they're fiscally sound with a diverse revenue stream, and they bounced back from 2020, ending 2022 with a surplus. Under IDEA, they're located in Carmel, but they've made changes over the last several years to increase representation in both collections and staff. They're in the process of diversifying their collection and planning exhibits that relate to historically underrepresented audiences and give many examples. They acknowledge that they need to continue their outreach to low-income populations. The museum upholds artistic standards in its collections and educational programs. They gave examples of their process of and commitment to artistic quality. In addition to an internship program they hope to offer in 2023, in partnership with the University Museum Studies program, they offer six types of arts education. I was impressed that they offer a free audio tour in Chinese, Japanese, and Spanish. Under community engagement, they demonstrate a commitment to including community input defined by staff, board, volunteers, visitors, and business educational partners in planning their activities. And they've demonstrated that community input is an important part of their program development delivery. They've gave an example of two-way mutually beneficial relationships in that they reached out to the Museum Studies program, which needs internships for its students, and the museum itself needs intern help as a largely volunteer-run organization.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. Additional comments on this application?
I had a couple small comments. Under the IDEA category, there's a moment where the applicant describes a disclaimer for historically accurate miniatures that might be problematic. And I just wondered if I didn't see in there any effort to balance those things. So for example, if it's a problematic display, is there a competing narrative right next to it instead of just the disclaimer as a suggestion? And then finally, I had a small comment at the community engagement portion, where it seems like they take it seriously, but I wondered if it could be formalized somehow. For example, it seems like they're talking a lot and there's that knowledge, but could it be formalized in some way that helps them to collect data about demographics for the IDEA portion of their efforts as well?
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask the panelists to take a few moments to finalize their scores for this application. Okay, it looks like our fourth panelist has joined us. Liz, welcome. If if you would unmute yourself and introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, what organization you might be with and where you're Zooming from today, then I'll brief you quickly on the process and we'll review the last 3 applications.
Great. Hi, I'm Liz from Bragg. I live in Chandler, Indiana, which is almost in Kentucky, down here on the Ohio River. I've previously worked at the Evansville Museum of Arts, History, and Science for 13 years, but I am now a stay-at-home mom and arts advocate for our community.
Welcome, Liz. Just very quickly, I'll just kind of restate the process that we've been going through with the panel to this point, and that is we'll introduce the next application. You're the first reader for that application, so we'll ask, or the reader for that application. So we'll ask you to go through the 4 evaluative criteria, share your comments, and then we'll open it up for the full panel to discuss, and then we'll score. Adjust final scores, and then we'll move on to the next application. Any questions about the process? Fantastic. All right. We do have a conflict of interest for this next application, which is Indiana Writers Center. So Megan will be going to panelist limbo for the discussion, and there she's gone, just like that. So now we're on Indiana Writers Center, and Liz, you are the reader for that application. So whenever you're ready.
Great. So under organizational excellence comments, I found the narrative to be well written and clear. The organization is clearly focused on providing opportunities to support its mission. The mission is provided felt lengthy and overly specific. However, it is definitely supported by the organization. I thought it was great to see how the organization has handled the previous few years and that they were returning to in-person programming. While the specific budget size was not large, it appears to be well in hand, and they have a solid plan for managing cash flow and future programs. Staff and board structure seemed appropriate for the size of the organization. There appears to be thought behind the selection of the board towards the health of the organization and reaching voices in their community. There were mentions of new staff members, and it wasn't clear to me in this section if any of them were new positions or just new members. New positions always a positive thing for a nonprofit, and they should tout that anytime they have a new position in their nonprofit. Programming mentioned in the narrative was diverse and inclusive. The staff lists 1 person in charge of all programming. If there are board committees or volunteer groups to assist in the programming, it would be great to add that here because it seems like a huge undertaking for 1 person to be in charge of. Under IDEA, I felt that it was really obvious that the organization was committed to reaching a diverse audience in both participants and in workshop leaders. The narrative indicates an organization that has thought about the community it serves and how to best include all the members of that community. They've also put thought in how best to reach them from location of the organization to the location of their events and their outreach programming. Artistic quality. Thought their artistic quality was incredibly high. They clearly defined the ways that they were measuring the quality of their programming. They clearly had a way to measure the appropriate steps that were taken to assure those that hired for the programming are suited for their individual roles. The breakdown of the background of the writers hired appeared to be diverse, and the standards were high in order to assure the quality of the programming. And for community engagement, there was an impressive amount of outreach to the community through programming. The diversity of the outreach is clear, and it reflects the organization's statements supporting the IDEA strategies of diversity and inclusion. There should be more in this section to show how the community partnerships benefit the other organizations outside of their organization. I want to know not just what benefits they're receiving from them, but what they're giving to those other organizations that would really benefit the narrative.
Fantastic. Thank you, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll open up to the full panel. Any additional comments on this application?
Yeah, I have a couple. I agree a lot with what Liz had to say. Just under organizational excellence, I really appreciate the statement they made where they say writing is not a solitary experience. And I just love the fact that that acknowledges, that point of view informs the programming, and it acknowledges that you do writing by yourself, but the process, the creative process is so important. And I think that says a lot about this organization. Also, see, I think I had something under artistic quality to add. Give me just a second.
No worries.
Yes, under artistic quality, it was clear to me that the staff and the leaders are qualified and talented, but I wondered about efforts made in the programming to create a space that isn't intimidating for new writers. And I don't assume that this is the case for this organization, but just as a thought, like what is done to help new writers feel comfortable around writers that are seen as experts, so that it doesn't stifle that growth. And that's all I had.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Any other comments from panelists? All right. Hearing none, I'll ask our panelists to finalize their scores for this application. It looks like everyone has finalized, and now Megan is back. Welcome back, Megan. Our next application is Indie Movement Arts Collective, and Joanna Taft has a conflict with that application as well as the subsequent ones. So we will put her in panelist limbo. The next two, Liz, you are the reader for this application, the Indie Movement Arts Collective. So whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right, so organizational excellence. The Indie Movement Arts seems to be very aware of what value they bring to their community. It's clear from their narrative. They strive to provide something for all levels and backgrounds and are taking appropriate measures to be inclusive of skill levels and diversity. They seem to truly attempt to provide for their community. They're aware of the difficulties of fundraising in today's climate and address that head on, prioritizing the teachers contracted for programming in pay over the organization's needs shows a clear commitment to the dance and movement community above and beyond hosting classes, which was really great to see. The last section here, which discusses the financial situation, could be strengthened by including some specific plans and ideas for strategy in the face of needing to raise new money for the organization. They specifically mention the end of a funding source, and the grant would really benefit from including some of the plans that they're considering to replace those funds, even if it's simply as easy as saying, we're applying for an IAC grant to replace these funds. That would be nice to see here to strengthen that idea behind there. Under IDEA, I really felt it was clear and conscientious decision to take the organization in a direction that was more inclusive. The narrative focuses a lot on racial diversity. However, the IAC defines diversity beyond race to include geographic location, low income, age, race, cultural differences, and other circumstances. I'd like to see more information given on how they're including all of these ideas in their structure, especially with planning and outreach. The narrative does mention reaching out to low and no visibility participants, which is great. That's really wonderful. And then scholarships being available for low income. And those are both excellent IDEA strategies. I want to see more of that, more expansion on that. The organizational excellence narrative mentions the different types of dance offered. And I think they really need to expand on that in this section because that could really benefit this section. For artistic quality, it is clear the organization is focused on the quality of the programs and workshops they provide. From using experienced teaching staff to bringing in high quality presenters annually, they're seeking to maintain a high level of quality. The narrative shows a specific shift in the mindset of the organization due to the pandemic, which seems to have strengthened the outreach of them by utilizing digital medium and by focusing on bringing in internationally known dancers. So I really feel like their artistic quality is high and that their focus seems to really be on this area. Under community engagement, the application would benefit more in the community engagement area. There is a list of groups that they partner with, but no information as to how any of these partnerships function. More information is needed here to show how the organization is involved with the community and how other community organizations benefit from the involvement in those partnerships. They mentioned that the employees often take their own classes and that's how they gain insight for their programming. That's great. But that's just a start. There needs to be formal information gathering and data needs to be brought in to show growth and engagement, to show that they're really reaching their audiences and that they're really bringing what their community needs to the community. That's it.
Great, thanks, Liz. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional comments on this one. All right. All right. I'm seeing and hearing no additional comments. So we will ask the panelists to take a few minutes and finalize their scores. Okay, our next application is Indiana Plein Air Painters Association. And Patrick, you are the reader for that application whenever you're ready.
All right, let's see. Under organizational excellence, seems like the applicant has a clear understanding of its purpose and has the capacity and insight to accomplish their mission. I'm only curious about vision for the future, if the organization will change in any ways with growth. If all of a sudden they get an influx of a lot more painters, what does that mean? Does the programming change? What does that look like? How do those experiences change? Under idea, I'm curious about the demographics about the organization, diversity on the board and leadership in the community of painters. How diverse is the group, and how does that affect the culture of the organization? Are there clear pathways for painters that, for example, may not be able to travel to these different communities to participate? So if there's a painter who's excited about plein air painting and lives paycheck to paycheck, how do they get to some of these paint outs that are in remote locations that require maybe an overnight stay and that sort of thing? Under artistic quality, I love the ability to have critiques at the paint outs. For anyone that's been to art school, it seems like it comes up at some point in your life that you miss those chances to have a group that knows what they're talking about, kind of unpack what the work is. And I think it's rare and it's super valuable to have an organization that has that built in, because it only helps not just the painter, but everybody that's participating. The workshops are also, of course, important. And I see a lot of educational pieces beyond that support what they're doing. Down in the community engagement portion, I like the attitude expressed in the sentence, the community is the engine while the arts organization is the gasoline that provides the power. To me, that shows an attitude in the organization that the community is the important part, and that engagement with the community of painters and the leadership isn't taken for granted in any sense. I also just like the partnerships with all the communities. I guess that's a counterbalance to the idea that some people can't get to the communities. The positive is that effort is valuable, bringing painters to new locations and seeing different landscapes, experiencing different areas is valuable. That's what I got on that one.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. So we'll open it up to the full panel for additional discussion on this application.
One thing I did wonder about under community engagement was, it's great. I love that they're going to all these rural communities. It's absolutely fabulous. I would like to see a little bit of information about how they're reaching these communities, to get them to know about what's going on and to see that they participate, because often in rural communities, they don't have a lot of arts outreach, which means they don't have an established art audience. And so I just kind of would like to see a little more information as how they're pulling in a non-traditional art audience into these communities.
Thank you, Liz. Any other comments on this application? Okay, hearing none, I will ask our panelists to finalize their scores. When we're done, we'll bring Joanna back from panelist limbo because she had a conflict of interest for this application. She's back. Welcome back, Joanna. So This concludes the FY24 Arts Organization Support Advisory Review Panel. Big thanks to our panelists for the time that they spent reviewing the applications and for their time today in discussion for this in this live panel review process. Applicants will be notified of the status of their grant following the June IAC quarterly business meeting. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your regional arts partner. Thank you so much for watching us today, and take care.